This serial broadcast is brought to you by WBEZ Chicago. One story told week by week. I'm Colin Linder.
I'm Jeff White.
And I'm Christopher Matthews.
Let's just get one thing straight. Adnan is the obvious murderer.
No, he's definitely not. He is 100% innocent.
How? All the evidence is stacked against him. There's no way he could be innocent.
What do you mean? All the evidence is on his side. I mean, everything the state said to prove Adnan guilty is complete BS.
Well, what about the Nisha call?
What about it?
You know what I mean? The supports involvement of Adnan in the crime and his guilt.
Yeah, but it could have just been another call when that call happened, and this call was just Adnan wanting to meet up with something else. Adnan may have wanted.
I mean, yeah, that call doesn't really prove anything unless we know exactly what that call said. It can't prove anything. If it was indeed that call that Jay said it was, then yeah, okay, maybe that would prove Jay was with Adnan at that time. But I mean, it still doesn't actually mean that Adnan was doing those events that night.
Yeah, we don't know anything about Jay. What he was just saying in the call in the story to prove up was right. Since Jay knew Adnan was indeed there with him, Jay could have been trying to prove Adnan guilty when Jay was the real murderer. At least something big in the role of Heyman Lee's murder.
Okay, but what about Adnan being in Lincoln Park that night? That proves Adnan was there. How can that be?
Well, that isn't reliant information, and that whole timeline is wrong that the state has. So I mean, first off, AT&T stated in their notes in the form with the cell records that only outgoing calls are reliable for location. Incoming calls are not accurate for location. Both of those calls, may I remind you, were incoming calls. So either A, Adnan's defense attorney had a major oversight in reviewing the AT&T form, or B, the state of Maryland withheld information to the defense attorney and the jury, which would have most likely changed the outcome of the case. This would have also been a major Brady violation, which is a violation of the state's laws, and the state would have violated those laws, and the state would have been in a lot of trouble. So secondly, if Adnan was even in Lincoln Park, he wouldn't have even been there to bury Hayes' body. Hay would have been somewhere else. Hayes' body had a large amount of liver mortis on the front side. This means that she would have had to have been lying face down for 8 to 10 hours, and the earliest Hay could have been killed that day would have been at 2:30. So that means at the very earliest she could have been buried the way that she was at 10:30 to 12:30 at night, or 10:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. the following day, at the very earliest. Since they found the corpse of Hay on her back, Adnan could not have been the one to have placed Hay there. Adnan had no part in the burying of Heyman Lee. On the contrary, I believe Jay did.
Okay, so you got me in a corner because I don't think there's any way to prove, based on all those facts, that Adnan actually did do it. But I still don't think it's enough to, say Jay is guilty either. I think there's still some stuff that needs to be turned over for Jay to automatically be the killer.
I mean, yeah.
Jay is a big suspect in Hayes' murder. It's very odd how much he knows and how supposedly little he's involved. I think Jay committed the murder of Heyman Lee or helped someone else out that did. Maybe Jay helped Don kill Hay. Jay knew where Hayes' car was. What was interesting about the patch of grass underneath, it was still green. That means the car wasn't there the whole time.
And wait, that's the patch of grass underneath her car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was grass in the wheel wells, right?
I mean, and
yeah.
Didn't they do a study that or not a study, but they did a test to just verify that the grass would have died, and it did die?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
To further that, the car would have been covered in snow and ice if it was left outside in the conditions in part of Maryland it had dealt with. But Hayes' car was finally all clean.
Yeah.
The authorities also found signs of potential hot wire in Hayes' car. Jay was involved in the murder more than we know. We just don't know his motive.
Really? Jay was this involved? And, what about...
You said something about Dawn, right?
Yeah, you said something about
Yeah. Don's manager is his mother, meaning that his manager mom may have been protecting him. Also, Don claims he's doing something while Hay was getting murdered. But that would have meant he had been working his 40-hour limit for that week. Don appeared at work with his hands covered in bandages because they said a cat scratched him. That's bogus. I think those were Hayes' claws marking from defending her life.
Yeah, her like fingernail marks like in his
Yeah.
hands. Yeah, yeah.
Defending herself so she wouldn't die.
Yeah, how was this overlooked in court? I mean,
Yeah.
Was
I don't know.
like Adnan was the only one that had his criminal record pulled. They never really looked into
Yeah.
Dawn. They never really
So
looked into anyone
you
else.
think
I
Adnan's innocent now, right?
I do. I
Yeah.
think that there's.
Yeah, if they looked into more people, like
There's
they looked
two-
into Adnan, they would have found everything
Yeah,
that
and,
on
like,
Dawn,
Jay's-
but they just didn't
And
because
then-
they just.
So yeah, they didn't pull Jay's criminal record. They didn't pull Don's, and
They-
also like Jay lied about like all of his interrogations and
Yeah.
like when he was like telling his story. Every time he would change it when new information came out, or if like new information that was like proven wrong came out, he would change like his story to match that, or change it back to like, oh sorry, I didn't mean that, or something like that. You
And
know,
what-
it's just.
And what
crazy.
about that Mr. S dude and the
I mean-
Robert Lee dude that killed a girl? And
Yeah,
that was
Robert-
18 years old,
Yeah.
and then he had just gotten out of
Yeah.
jail 12 days prior to the death of Heyman Lee.
No, I think that's interesting, but I also think that might have been like a big coincidence. And I also because remember they did like a test to find like any because that Robert Lee or Robert Morley or whatever his name was, they said that he usually rapes his victims. And then they found they did like
No
spermicide
evidence.
test, and they found like no evidence of that in
Yeah.
him. So I don't think it's him necessarily, but like I will say,
Mr. S is a little suspicious.
Mr. S is a
though.
little suspicious, but he's also a really odd guy.
He's
Yeah, like,
he's
how did he
he's
find
a
the
drunk
body?
streaker who's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
school janitor. Like,
There's no way he
Yeah,
could like
I
just
guess.
find the body. Even the police couldn't find the body
Which I
when they
think
were
was odd,
when they
but
knew
then-
there.
Yeah,
But then
but
also in
he-
the serial podcast,
he
they
walked
said
like 127 feet in.
Well, that was 'cause
not,
he-
and not in just a straight path, like a weird snake-like path, and happened to find his way to
I mean,
the most hidden body.
Yeah, but
like,
didn't Sarah Koenig in Serial like in one of the previous episodes, didn't she actually like, go there and she said, yeah, I mean if I was a guy gonna go pee in the woods, I mean this doesn't seem like that would be that far. So I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you're gonna want
And
your
why would he
privacy.
go
but
that
then again,
far? He's a
but then again, he's a
streaker.
streaker. Yeah,
So
know
I
if
don't
he'd
think he really
necessarily
cares.
care.
Everyone's already
I
seen
mean,
it.
even if you're a streaker, I think you're still entitled to your own privacy if you want it. I mean,
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, I
mean, I
guess. I don't
Like,
know.
think about strippers. They can be all fun in the clubs, but I guarantee you they want their own privacy once in a while.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I
probably.
think probably Mr. S just kind of had like a really like weird coincidence with it, and
Yeah.
I mean, he may have just found it. I'm not really sure,
And they
but I
didn't
think
even-
Jay and Don have so much more evidence going for them being guilty than like what Mr. S.
I think that Adnan is not guilty. I think that we can come to a conclusion that it was Don or
Yeah, I think so
Jay,
too.
And
All right,
that's
well-
all the time we have for today.
Yep.
Uh,
Next time on
next time
Serial.
on Serial.
Bye.